The High Kings of Ireland were sometimes historical and sometimes legendary figures who had, or who are claimed to have had, lordship over the whole of Ireland. Medieval and early modern Irish literature portrays an almost unbroken sequence of high kings, ruling from the hill of Tara over a hierarchy of lesser kings, stretching back thousands of years. Modern historians believe this scheme is artificial, constructed in the 8th century from the various genealogical traditions of politically powerful groups, and intended to justify the current status of those groups by projecting it back into the remote past. The concept of national kingship is first articulated in the 7th century, but only became a political reality in the Viking Age, and even then not a consistent one. While the High King's degree of control varied, Ireland was never ruled by them as a politically unified state, as the High King was conceived of as an overlord exercising suzerainty over, and receiving tribute from, the independent kingdoms beneath him. Sacred High Kings. Early Irish kingship was sacred in character. In the early narrative literature, a king is a king because he marries the sovereignty goddess, is free from blemish, enforces symbolic buada and avoids symbolic girsa. According to 7th and 8th century law tracts, a hierarchy of kingship and clientship progressed from the Ritwaith through the Ruiri to a Riruarech. Each king ruled directly only within the bounds of his own petty kingdom and was responsible for ensuring good government by exercising furthermore, his responsibilities included convening its Senate, collecting taxes, building public works, external relations, defense, emergency legislation, law enforcement, and promulgating legal judgment. The lands in a petty kingdom were held allidially by various fine of freemen. The king occupied the apex of a pyramid of clientship within the petty kingdom. This pyramid progressed from the unfree population at its base up to the heads of noble fine held in immediate clientship by the king. Thus the king was drawn from the dominant fine within the cene acutel. The kings of the Ulster cycle are kings in this sacred sense, but it is clear that the old concept of kingship coexisted alongside Christianity for several generations. Diarmait Maxabael, king of Tara in the middle of the 6th century, may have been the last king to have married the land. Diarmait died at the hands of Aed Maxuabni. Some accounts from the following century state that he died by the mythic threefold death, appropriate to a sacral king. Adomnin's life tells how St. Columba forecast the same death for Aedidub. The same threefold death is said in a late poem to have befallen Diarmait's predecessor, Muirkatach Macursi, and even the usually reliable annals of Ulster record Muirchetic's death by drowning in a vat of wine. A second sign that sacred kingship did not disappear with the arrival of Christianity is the supposed lawsuit between Congal Siege, king of the Ulaid, and Domnall Mac Aidio. Congal was supposedly blinded in one eye by Domnall's beast, from whence his byname Siege, this injury rendering him imperfect and unable to remain High King. The enmity between Domnall and Congal can more prosaically be laid at the door of the rivalry between the Uine Acutil and the kings of Ulaid. But that a king had to be whole in body appears to have been accepted at this time. Succession order. The business of Irish succession is rather complicated because of the nature of kingship in Ireland before the Norman takeover of 1171. Ireland was divided into a multiplicity of kingdoms, with some kings owing allegiance to others from time to time, and succession rules vary. Kings were often succeeded by the sons, but often other branches of the dynasty took a turn, whether by agreement or by force of arms is rarely clear. Unfortunately, the king lists and other early sources reveal little about how and why a particular person became king. To add to the uncertainty. Genealogies were often edited many generations later to improve an ancestor's standing within a kingdom, or to insert him into a more powerful kindred. The uncertain practices in local kingship cause similar problems when interpreting the succession to the High Kingship. The High King of Ireland was essentially a ceremonial, pseudo-federal overlord, who exercised actual power only within the realm of which he was actually king. In the case of the southern branch of the Uí Néill, this would have been the Kingdom of Meath. High kings from the northern branch ruled various kingdoms in what eventually became the province of Ulster. In 1002, the High Kingship of Ireland was wrested from Mael Secnal II of the southern Uí Néill by Brian Orma mac Cenedog of the Kingdom of Munster. Some historians have called this a usurpation of the throne. Others have pointed out that no one had a strict legal right to the kingship and that Brian had as much right to the high throne as any Uí Néill, and displayed an ability sadly lacking amongst most of the Uí Néill who had preceded him. Brian was killed in the Battle of Clontarf in 1014. Mael Secnal II was restored to the High Kingship, but he died in 1022. From 1022 through the Norman takeover of 1171, the High Kingship was held alongside kings with opposition. Early Christian high kings. Even at the time the law tracts were being written, these petty kingdoms were being swept away by newly emerging dynasties of dynamic overkings. The most successful of these early dynasties were the Uí Néill, who as kings of Tara had been conquering petty kingdoms, expelling the rulers and agglomerating the territories under the direct rule of their expanding kindred since the 5th century. Native and foreign, pagan and Christian ideas were commingled to form a new idea of Irish kingship. The native idea of a sacred kingship was integrated with the Christian idea in the ceremony of coronation. The relationship of king to overking became one of tigona to king, and imperium began to merge with dominium. The Church was well disposed to the idea of a strong political authority. Its clerics developed the theory of a high kingship of Ireland and wrote tracts exhorting kings to rule rather than reign. In return, the Perugia of the Irish Church received royal patronage in the form of shrines, building works, land and protection. The concept of a high king was occasionally recorded in various annals, such as an entry regarding the death of Mael Secnal mac Mael Ruinade in 862 in the Annals of Ulster, which lists him as Rierin Uile, a title which his successor A.D. Finlayth apparently never was granted. It is unclear what political reality was behind this title. Later high kings. By the 12th century, the dual process of agglomeration of territory and consolidation of kingships, or the handful of remaining provincial kings, abandoning the traditional royal sites for the cities, employing ministers and governors, receiving advice from an oirict, presiding at reforming synods and maintaining standing armies. Early royal succession had been by alternation between collateral branches of the wider dynasty, but succession was now confined to a series of father, son, brother and uncle, nephew successions within a small royal fine marked by an exclusive surname. These compact families intermarried and competed against each other on a national basis, so that on the eve of the Anglo-Norman incursion of 1169, the agglomeration, consolidation process was complete and the provincial kingdoms divided, dismembered and transformed into fiefdoms held from one of the number acting as King of Ireland.